Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. We're continuing to take a look at some of these programs that can win a national championship in 2023, and we are on our Michigan Wolverines. This is the episode that Dylan and I have been waiting most to do, taking a deep dive. We got 5 reasons why we think this Michigan team can break through and win a national championship in 2023. Now, before we do, again, just want to say thank you to you guys and especially the Michigan fans. You guys have shown a ton of love and support. So if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And then more importantly, in the comment section, if you have a reason that we didn't include, let us know. Dill, I'm going to kick this one off to you. It has to be the year.
It has to be. And I'm so filled with anxiety heading into this football season to a point I've never really been in. And I'm wondering if Michigan fans feel the same way, or if that's unique to me. But it's just when you have this type of window where, again, everybody in Michigan needed to come back, came back. Keegan, Zinner, Chris Jenkins. These guys are all pro football. Blake Corum, they're all pros, and they're all back. Cornelius Johnson, I can just keep naming them. It just feels like everything's coming together. It's got to be Michigan this year.
I think another storyline for that is you take a look at the national landscape, the teams that we have to beat to win a national title. Georgia replaces a quarterback. Alabama replaces a quarterback. Ohio State replaces a quarterback. This Michigan team returns so much of what made this team special in 2022, while a lot of the other teams have to do a little bit of retooling. So, Dill, let's get into the 5 reasons. And it's got to start on the offensive line. And you look at the success Michigan's had the last couple of years, it's because of a dominant offensive line. Back-to-back Joe Moore Award winners. And for somehow, this Michigan offensive line is going to be significantly better than it was in 2022.
And you lose 2 guys in Olu and Ryan Hayes, both really good players. And
shout out Olu, my absolute guy, by the way.
And just like what Drake Nugent is Olu part 2. It's a guy who's just a seasoned vet, just like a pro's pro almost in a sense, playing that center position for a long time at a really high level, coming in game ready. And now you get guys in Ladarius Henderson and Miles Hinton to shore up that tackle spot. That again, even if those 2 guys don't come in, you're still really comfortable with what you have in Trente Jones and Carson Barnhart. But now it's you're looking at an offensive line. I don't see how it doesn't take a significant step forward in a sense.
In a college football world where the transfer portal is out and about, so many teams were in line to get offensive tackles in the transfer portal. And Michigan didn't even need offensive tackles in the transfer portal. We at one point we might have just got Miles Hinton and Ladarius Henderson, so Ohio State couldn't. Ohio State needs a tackle. They had to go get Joshua Simmons from San Diego State. So there was an element of that, and this offensive line was complete. You go add 3 veteran guys who are NFL caliber players, and we didn't even name the 2 guys returning who I think are maybe the 2 best offensive linemen on this group in Trevor Keegan and Zach Zinner. This offensive line is not only talent rich with, maybe 7 guys who might get selected in the NFL draft, but also extremely deep with guys like Giovanni.
Captain the shit back. You got Sharon Moore, who again, felt like he was very much in line for the possibly going to take a head coaching job. He's back. He's not taking the Northwestern job. That job is not good enough for him.
No.
And just to have him back is again, I think it's massive. A guy who's pretty much changed this Michigan program in our minds is coming in that year, bringing this offensive line to being the leader of this team and being.
If you think of the 2, Sharon Moore might had the biggest impact on Michigan's success the last 2 years.
100%.
I really do think that. And then Ben Herbert is probably the next guy up. And what this offensive line group is consistently, and it's not only going to be good in 2023. This is a group that has 7 other guys that would be starters at other Power 5 levels. They're staying, trusting the process. Still, what's even more exciting about this offensive line is the running back duo that you have behind it. Blake Corum coming back. The biggest storyline for me is Donovan Edwards finally being healthy. You hear, the broken hand. He had all sorts of injuries during that 2022 season. Having a healthy Donovan Edwards to maybe take a little bit of a load off Blake Corum and keep him fresh, I think that's a game changer.
And that would be the big thing for me is they just can't give Blake Corum that many carries in games against Maryland. He can't be taking 30, 40 carries in that game and then have him wearing down towards the end of the year. Because you ask me if he plays that TCU game, there's no chance Michigan loses it, because Blake Corum is the reason Michigan's running game is as consistent, as effective as it is. Donovan Edwards brings his skill set to the game for sure, and the explosiveness and things that he does a little better than Blake Corum. But just down in and down out football, running the ball, getting 5 yards consistently, and chewing up like yeah, that's Blake Corum's game. And
I
when
think
he's
you noticed something really. I mean, like the way that Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards balance each other out. Like Blake Corum will be the lead back in this group, and then it's crazy to say because Donovan. It sounds like we're hating on Donovan Edwards. I think he's a top 5 running back in the country. I truly do, and he provides so much juice out of the backfield. You saw how explosive he was against Ohio State with those runs. They both they balance each other out beautifully. You have two of the best running backs in the country, running behind the best offensive line in the country. I have no question about this rushing attack. I think the question that we do have is probably, is this passing attack going to take that step? And we saw it at the end of the season against Purdue and TCU. It was coming. Now, can it be like that consistent thing where if teams want to load the box, we can beat them vertically kind of with that deep ball?
and that'll be the thing. It's just cashing in on those plays that were there. And JJ McCarthy with a whole year as being the guy having spring camp, which he obviously didn't have it the year before, and not having to fight the battle out with Cade McNamara for that number 1 job. I don't see how he doesn't take a step because like you see the talent's all there. You knew that coming in, frankly, from high school. It's just kind of be more on the same page with all those wide receivers and tight ends, which at times it looked like they weren't necessarily last year.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. And position group that I've been critical of, and some Michigan fans, we've not gotten into it, but had a discussion in the comment section about the wide receiver position. You have your guys in Corey Johnson and Roman Wilson. Knock on wood, we can get a healthy Roman Wilson the whole season because I really do think he has some juice. My bigger question, and we'll get to the tight ends who are very important. My bigger question is which of these young wide receivers are going to take that next step? Darius Clemens, Tyler Morris. I think you could even throw Christian Dixon or Peyton O'Leary in that conversation. If one of them can take that step, replace a little of that production that Ronnie Bell leaves out, that is, to me, the key to this passing attack.
And that'll be what you're looking for is one of those two guys. I mean, Tyler Morris and Darius Clemens so talented. You knew that coming out of high school. You've seen some flashes from both, especially Darius Clemens in spring games, especially his freshman year one. It'll be interesting to see if one of those two guys can kind of become more dynamic playmaker and kind of again replace what Ronnie Bell did because he was such a big part of what they were doing.
Dill, who leads us in passing yards this year, receiving yards this year?
Cornelius Johnson. Cornelius Johnson needs to get his respect as number 1 wide receiver. I know you want to say what you want to say, but I mean, for the rest of my life, I'll be indebted to him for what he did against Ohio State, and you just see it when they need big plays. He's been making them. He's done it. He's done it against Penn State both years. He did it last year against Ohio State. He did it in 22 against Ohio State or 2021 against Ohio State. He is a baller, like 100%. It's just can JJ be consistent for him and let him rock and roll because he can play.
And then the best part about the passing attack is the tight ends. I mean, like Colson Loveland, I think a bona fide top 5 tight end in the country. You have AJ Barner, and then you could even talk about like Matthew Hebner. The guy, like this tight end group is loaded. It's going to be a part of we really don't have many questions about that. Like I think this tight end group,
and frankly, that should be a reason why Michigan plays better in the red zone, which obviously killed them last year.
That is something. Yeah,
you got two dynamic tight ends. Like put the ball in. It's not that hard when you got two guys like those.
That was the most frustrating thing before we move on to the defense last year is you have an elite rushing attack. You have a phenomenal tight ends, and we can't score touchdowns in the red zone. That needs to get better. Like when you see teams struggle in the red zone, it's because they can't run the ball. The passing windows get small. That's why they stall out. We have no reason to be kicking as many field goals as we do, and we don't have Jake Moody, so we better be scoring some touchdowns this season. I mean, that's what it gets down to now. The defensive side of the ball, this is the group, Dill, the defensive line, especially the pass rush, that's the group that I'm most excited for because you have legit 4 names that could really break out and be elite. Dill, I'll ask you this. Who's your guy that's breaking out and kind of being the when we had Aiden Hutchinson and David Ajabo, like those were the guys when you needed a play on 3rd and long, pin your ears back, go get the quarterback. It was one of those guys. Dill, who's going to be that guy in 2023 for the boys?
I think it's going to be Josiah Stewart. And you saw it in the spring game.
Yes.
He looked very tough to block. He has that explosiveness, that like extra something you're looking for on the edge that, again, Michigan just didn't feel like it had last year. There's nobody who's going to based on the play last year, going to be an NFL draftable edge player. It's like, can Braden McGregor emerge into that? Will Derek Moore probably emerge into that? Yes. Jalen Harrell, obviously very good, especially against the run. But for me, I think Josiah Stewart has now demonstrated that he has that extra gear to be a dynamic edge rusher that Michigan just didn't have. It was kind of frustrating last year.
Yeah, I'm gonna do my best to keep this short because I want to just say like every single name on the defensive line. You did Jalen Harrell. I mean, he's a guy that I think is like one of the most slept on players for Michigan. He's not necessarily the best pass rusher, but what he does in the run game, maintaining that edge, he's so dominant. And then my guy to pick, you didn't ask me, which was a little rude, but my guy, I'm going Derek Moore. And what you saw, the power in his hands as a true freshman was special. I think he takes that next step. And it's crazy that we're not saying picking Braden McGregor because he certainly could be that guy. So many guys that can step up. This group could be one of the best in the country. That's not even to mention you have a guy in Chris Jenkins on the inside or Mason Graham too, who is a phenomenal true freshman that could really get it done. I expect this pass rush to be elite. Now, Dale, the one, I mean, you got like one question mark out of the starting 22 players on the offense and defense. You got one question mark, which is crazy. That's how deep this Michigan team is. That's how complete this Michigan team is. It's in the secondary. It's the cornerback opposite of Will Johnson. But Dale, this secondary as a whole should be very good, especially if we can kind of address that one spot.
And that's it. It's like, the other four guys are just incredible. I mean,
So good.
Sandra still talk about like a heartbeat guy of the team, just been there, very much part of the turnaround in my eyes. Will Johnson has emerged into a true star, and then Rod Moore and McCarty Page are just nails in the back end, especially Rod Moore. He's just like coming from where he's come from in the recruiting world and whatnot. I mean, just a guy who's been like the perfect fit for what Michigan wants to do. And frankly, with what the Michigan program has been for the last 2 years, it will be, can somebody take control of that other cornerback spot? And to add a guy like Josh Wallace late in the process, I just think it's huge because you have a guy you don't need to necessarily worry about. Will he be like an all Big Ten guy? Who knows? But you're not going to get like really bad poor play out of that spot.
100% agree with Josh Wallace. I think it's so massive to get it's like an insurance policy. I think Michigan, if Marion Walker can step up and be that guy with the length, the speed, the athleticism he has, you feel really good. If he's not ready yet, which he probably wasn't ready in the spring, and we'll see what the rest of fall camp has to say. If he's not ready, you have a veteran in Josh Wallace who's played at a high level to come in. Another guy, Jaden McBurrows, who some of the listeners in the comment section letting us know he's another guy that you could certainly be talking about. It's a deep group. You have a couple guys that you're waiting to see if they can step up. Though the last piece of this puzzle is taking a look at the schedule because you got to run the table. I love how this, and the biggest part of the schedule is you get in Ohio State at home and Ann Arbor, looking for a three-peat against them. Outside of Ohio State, it's on the road at Penn State, which you're maybe a little nervous about. But Dill, this is a schedule that, I mean, Michigan should roll if they can get through Penn State on the road and Ohio State at home.
I mean, and they'll be the preeminent favorites in pretty much all these games, I would think. I mean, unless Nebraska really does something crazy. They're the only one I feel like maybe has, again, just because I'm a Matt Rule guy, I guess they concern me a little bit. But, I mean, talent to talent, they're not really in Michigan's league right now. And frankly, no other team besides Penn State and Ohio State are. So it will be just like it's been for a while. Can they beat those two teams? And frankly, if you lose one close, can you still get into the playoffs? Certainly possible.
If you drop it on the road at Penn State, beat Ohio State, maybe. But I don't even want to talk about them losing because I think this is a team that shouldn't be losing any games on the schedule. And again, I think Ohio State at home is easily the biggest game of that season. If you are good enough to beat Ohio State,
thanks for sharing. Like, really, is Ohio State the biggest game?
That's very fair. A little stating the obvious there, but you get through Ohio State, and this team should be going to the Big Ten championship. There's not a team in the West that can sniff us, and then it's getting the college football playoffs and finally getting it done. And as we said, Georgia, Alabama, like there's a lot of I mean, this is the most question marks you've had about an Alabama team in the last decade. Georgia's still really good. We got to get through them. But again, it should get us to that game, and let's see if this Michigan team, it seems like it's the team of destiny. Cannot wait for the season again. Appreciate you guys checking the boys out. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. A lot of Michigan content rolling through in August. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys, and we'll talk to y'all later.